Hey guys, welcome to week 6. Almost halfway through the regular season since we have a 13-week regular season. So hope you're comfortable with where your teams are sitting. I know I'm not, but hopefully some of you are. So we'll see what happens in the second half of the regular season. This week's biggest blowout and highest scoring game was Gridiron Junkies taking down T-Bowing 747 Nick. So Andy taking down Nick. The score of that game was 149 to 180, 41-point margin of victory. The Gridiron Junkies had the best scoring quarterback this week, which was Kirk Cousins and his 30.8 points. Also contributing 25.8 points from Larry Fitzgerald were the two leaders on the Junkies team. Besides the top two scorers, he had only two players that put up less than 13 points, so he had a strong performance across the board from his team. T-Bowing was led this week by Baltimore's defense with 26.5 points. Also got a nice combo platter from his Denver combination, which is quarterback and wide receiver from Trevor Siemian with 19 points and Demaryius Thomas with 19 points. He was really hurt this week by his starting wide receivers. Demaryius Thomas is in his flex, and his two wide receivers, which is T.Y. Hilton and Michael Thomas, combining to put up a total of 5 points. This week's closest game was John Bobbitt Chris beating me, Gronky Kong, 122 to 118, about a 4-point margin. Bobbitt was led by Antonio Brown's 28.5 points. He had two players on his entire roster only score less than 10 points versus 4 players on my team scoring less than 5 points. So his team did much better overall, whereas my team had more overall studs go off. My team was led this week by Melvin Gordon, as usual, with 31.5 points, Leonard Fournette with 24 points, and Gronk with 23 points. I was really hurt this week by the choice to start Mike Wallace in my flex versus the Bears instead of Evan Ingram. I thought Denver's defense would be less crap. And the choice is to stream both Brandon McManus at the kicker position, who missed a field goal, and Tennessee's defense, who got lit up by Indianapolis and couldn't get any sacks. So another week and another sweat-out victory for Chris on Monday Night Football. We'll see how many of these he has to suffer through this year, but congrats to the win, buddy. In other games this week, we finally know what will settle the age-old debate. Boobs prevail over butts as Derek's love of boobies takes down Pope 1.0's love of bubble butts, 139 to 128. Pray for Mojo Jason defeated Dak Deuce Drew 87 to 80. And Jason, thank you for changing your name. Yours was the one that I was concerned about. So, second coming, Pope 2.0 defeated the now Aaron Rodgers-less Down Goes Teddy Lee 86 to 58. And as a Packers owner, I just want to take full blame for the loss of Rodgers this season, as it really hurts Green Bay and reduces the amount that I care about Lee's team, so I can talk about Aaron Rodgers some more. Finally, grabbing his first win of the year. I win because y'all drafted Josh, defeats Saved by the Bell Brandon, 109 to 91. Josh, my rooting for you lasted a whole 1 week as you play me this week, so good luck, but I'm going to kick your butt. On the waiver wire last week, we had a couple major pickups, and leading the way on that charge was the $40 man of Adrian Peterson, who went to Brandon. Unfortunately, Brandon lost this week, and he could have really used that big day of 28.5 points that Adrian Peterson put up riding the pine on his bench. Trevor Siemian was picked up by Nick. He did contribute a nice game of 19 points, but it wasn't enough to make up for Kirk Cousins' 30-point game. And finally, Marlon Mack was a $30 bid kind of guy last week by Pope 2.0. Marlon's bid for big things in the flex spot for Pope 2.0 this week was dashed when he only managed to contribute 2 carries for 18 yards on Monday night versus Tennessee. In terms of this week's waiver wire madness, Orleans Darkwa, the starting, well, actually, I don't even know if he's starting. I guess Timeshare may be running back for the New York Giants, went to Andy for a total bid of $51. He outbid Pope 2.0, Brandon, and Pope 1.0. I don't know if we're going to see Darkwa in the starting lineup this week for Andy, as he's currently starting both Kareem Hunt and Jordan Howard. I suspect that maybe Darkwa was picked up for the bye weeks coming up, as I saw that Andy only had one other back on his roster, and he was currently questionable with an injury. And then the other main guy on the waiver wire that was people were after this week was Big Ben. Big Ben was cut by Pope 2.0, which means there is a cap penalty for him, as he cut him before fulfilling his contract for the next 2 years. Hopefully he doesn't go off, but looks like the other team other teams in the league don't necessarily think he's going to have it figured out, as the extent of the bidding action was a winning bid of $2 to Pope 1.0, outbidding Nick and Brandon's $0 bid. Hey, new wagers to talk about. Unfortunately for Derek, this was not the right week to bid on Packers versus the Vikings with the Rodgers injury. And the second that the Packers lost Rodgers, basically Derek lost a growler of beer to Lee. Derek better hope that Green Bay figures out what to do with Brett Hundley under center, as this was a two-part bet with betting on the second matchup of Green Bay versus Minnesota as well. Should Green Bay win, it will just be a null bet, but if Minnesota should sweep both the Packer games, Derek will have to buy Lee's golf at draft next year. So good luck to both of you on that wager. And finally, a battle between the Scots this week that was mostly over before it really even started. And all the mad scramble last week for Ezekiel Elliott's backup of McFadden and Alfred Morris. Pope 1.0 and I were discussing whether or not Ezekiel Elliott would even be suspended or not. Yeah, his suspension was reinstated, but I personally didn't think it was going to last. I had read some legal mumbo-jumbo on the Reddits, and I had thought that they were going to get the suspension re-withheld again, I guess, based on a legal technicality. And that does appear to be what's happening, at least at the moment, so at least for a couple weeks. So we'll see if that stays to be the case or not, and maybe it does get lifted again. Maybe they do put the suspension back in place. At this point, I'm really not even confident that it won't change again before Sunday. Interesting games going on this weekend. We've got a battle between Pope 1.0 and Lee, currently sitting in 10th place versus 11th place, with a 2-4 team versus a 1-5 team. We'll see if they can tie up their records next week, or if whoever's sitting in 1-5 will get dropped further back in the pack. And finally, Jason versus Brandon, currently a matchup of 3rd place versus 4th place. As the guy sitting in 5th, I hope you both manage to lose.